"100 years ago, Brooklyn was one of the biggest brewing centers in the country, and now a group of small artisan beer makers are bringing those old school traditions back to the borough." Today we'll get an in-depth look at small-scale beer production. Then we'll take our newfound beer knowledge back to the kitchen for a brisket so moist, delicious, and flavorful, you'll wonder why you haven't been cooking with beer all your life. Before I set out to cook with beer, I needed to understand what goes into craft beer production, so I headed down to Sixpoint to chat with Shea Welch, founder, brewmaster, and beer philosophizer, who succeeds at producing some of Brooklyn's finest beers.
We moved here in 2004. At that time, this was really just a garage with some old, dilapidated brewing equipment. And what we did is we resurrected that over the period of several months. And then by March of 2005, we were fully operational.
And what kind of beers do you make?
Well, we're going on our 100th different beer that we've released since then. It ranges the entire spectrum from traditional lagers to craft ales with esoteric ingredients or processes. We do whatever kind of comes and inspires us. If we can think it, we brew it.
How is beer like this different than what people are used to seeing in like a deli, like Budweiser?
What they spill is more than what we make in 1 year.
Wow.
Sometimes the size of one of their vats will equal the entire annual output of our brewery. This is a craft that is incredibly labor intensive, especially on the craft level. So we don't have the benefit of automation. And so many things are done by hand. This is like really hard physical work. Every time we knock grain out of the mash tun like we're doing right now, that's about 4,000 pounds of grain that has to be taken out manually. The guys, like at the end of the day, or like if you're humping grain all day or moving kegs around, like your back hurts, you know what I mean? The other thing is the people here, they have a different source of inspiration that makes them want to make beer. They don't necessarily see it as just a product that's coming off an assembly line. They see it as a chance for them to be a part of something that's really creative. You know, I see it the same as like if you create a sound, like different sounds emerge in different musical realms. And after a while, like a group of musicians or a group of bands will create a signature sound, so whether it's like, you know, new wave or punk. So like I feel like with craft beer, there's a certain flavor profile or a template that has been forged by these group of creative people, and then you're sharing it with the community at large.
What kind of beer would you recommend for braising meat?
The righteous ale.
Yeah,
for sure.
righteous ale.
It has a signature malt profile that the other ones don't because it's made with rye. And rye has a sharpness to it. And so like when you start to cook with meats, when you trap heat inside and you get like that savory proteins and animal fats, you really need something that's going to kind of cut through that.
Right, yeah.
So they find like the righteous ale with its blend of like the sharper rye character with a lot of hops is the perfect beer to do that with.
Then Shane gave us a little tour of where the magic takes place and explained how the spent grain is put to good use.
This still has salvageable nutritional value. So there's still B vitamins in here, there's fiber. This is something that if it were discarded right now, it would sort of be a waste. So since this is essentially high-grade feed for sheep, chickens, cattle, so we actually donate it to local farmers. And you know, they love it because the corn that is grown for cattle feed across the country, and a lot of it's hybridized and a lot of it is genetically modified. It's like stuff that people would never eat, but for some reason it's good enough for cows. So when we give them like high-grade brewer's malt, the farmer said that like normally when it was feeding time, they kind of like lumber over and like kind of come in and they'd eat and graze. But like when the heat comes back with this stuff, they run like towards the feeding bin. So they're like psyched. I have a theory though. I think by the time it comes there, it's partially fermented. So like they're actually getting like some mild buzz off of it, right?
So of course we all like to drink beer, but not many of us actually think about cooking with it, which is really a shame. There's characteristics in the beer, the hops and the grain, that really make it an excellent braising liquid and perfect for meats. It adds a different depth of flavor that you can't necessarily achieve if you're using broth or water. So what we're gonna do is beer braise beef brisket. The result will be tender meat with a delicious sauce perfect for serving over pureed parsnips or mashed potatoes. So what I have here is a 3-pound beef brisket. Now I've left the fat on. A lot of recipes say to trim this fat off, but I like to leave it on because it helps keep the meat really moist. So the first thing I need to do is season the brisket. I have 2 teaspoons of salt here, and to that I'm gonna add a teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper, a teaspoon of paprika, and a teaspoon of cumin. So now I'm going to drizzle the brisket with just a little bit of olive oil to help those spices adhere. Rub it in there, massage it all over. All right, now for the spices. You want to make sure you evenly coat it and get all sides. All right, so we're gonna put this in the pan, fat side down, and sear it on all sides. So while this is searing, I'm gonna chop my onions. And now we're gonna flip it again. All right, so this guy is all ready to go. I'm just gonna take him out of the pan and let him rest for a while I saute my onions. There's some beef fat already in here, but I'm gonna still add a little extra olive oil. All right, just drop your onions in. We want to season every step, so we're going to add just a little touch of salt. Now that the onions are softened, it's time to add 4 cloves of chopped garlic. We're also going to add 1 bay leaf and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And now it's time for the fun part, the beer. We're just going to bring this up to a simmer and then place the brisket back in. It's simmering, so I'm just going to move my onions over to the side a little bit and make some room for the brisket. All right, place this bad boy back in here. And then I like to kind of, place the onions on top, give it a little extra flavor. And the goal is to get the liquid to come about halfway up the meat. So if 12 ounces of beer doesn't do it for you, just add a little bit of beef stock. All right, so I'm just gonna put a lid on it and pop it into a 325-degree oven for 5 hours. Now on the last hour, come and pop the lid off just a little bit. That will help the liquid to reduce and create a thick sauce with no extra work. So it's almost dinner time and I have my brisket here resting, and the only thing I need to do is skim the fat off of my sauce before I slice and serve. And for a dish like this, I always like to garnish it with a little something green. Brisket and beer? It doesn't get much better than this. For this recipe and more, visit hungryinbrooklyn.com. Bottoms up, everyone!